The world's most important energy corridor just went dark. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that carries nearly 20% of the world's oil supply, has shut down. Tankers are sitting idle. Ships are not moving. Countries that depend on Middle Eastern oil are now scrambling for answers. But here is what almost nobody is talking about. One country does not need that corridor at all. One country already has a pipeline running to the Pacific, an LNG terminal shipping to Asia, and 163 billion barrels of proven reserves. And that country just raised its oil prices to the United States. That country is Canada. Canada has officially begun adjusting the price of its oil exports to the United States, and the numbers are significant. For years, Canadian crude sold at a discount of $40 to $60 per barrel below global market rates. American refineries, especially in the Midwest, relied on that cheap Canadian supply. It was a stable, predictable arrangement. That arrangement is now over. With the Strait of Hormuz shut down and global energy markets in crisis, Canada is no longer pricing its oil as a captive supplier with one customer. It is pricing it as a global commodity with multiple buyers willing to pay full market value. Canadian officials have not made a single dramatic announcement. They did not need to. The market itself made the announcement. Global oil prices are climbing. Canadian oil is now flowing toward the highest bidder. And the highest bidders are no longer in Washington or Chicago. They are in New Delhi, Seoul, and Tokyo. American consumers are already beginning to feel the impact at the gas pump. The numbers behind this shift are concrete and significant. Canada currently produces 6 million barrels of oil per day. It holds the fourth largest proven reserves on Earth at 163 billion barrels. The Trans Mountain Pipeline, completed after years of construction, now moves 890,000 barrels per day directly to Canada's Pacific coast, not to the United States. In the year following Trans Mountain's expansion, Canada's non-US oil exports jumped by 289%. China alone purchased 100 million barrels in just 11 months. The Long Canada Terminal in British Columbia, the largest private investment in Canadian history at $40 billion, is now fully operational. It is shipping liquefied natural gas to South Korea at a rate of 170 ships per year. Meanwhile, India's top diplomat stated clearly that his country is willing to buy, and the exact words matter here, whatever Canada is offering. Not some, not a portion, whatever. And on February 28, Saskatchewan announced a uranium supply agreement with India's Atomic Energy Department worth $2.8 billion, covering 10 full years of supply. These are not negotiations. These are signed commitments. This situation did not develop overnight. It is the result of decisions made years ago that are now paying off at exactly the right moment. For decades, Canada sent 97% of its oil exports to a single buyer, the United States. Canadian energy ministers themselves called this a strategic vulnerability. With no alternatives, Canadian producers had to accept whatever price American refineries offered. The discount was not a favor. It was a consequence of having no other option. So Canada built other options. The Trans Mountain expansion tripled the pipeline's original capacity. The Long Canada Terminal opened a direct export route to Asia. Indigenous partnership agreements gave new pipeline projects both community support and political legitimacy. At the same time, Washington made a decision that would later look like a serious miscalculation. The United States pressured India to stop purchasing Russian oil. India complied. India redirected its energy purchases toward Gulf suppliers, the exact suppliers whose corridor has now shut down. America removed one supply option from India. Then the second option went dark, and Canada was already standing in Mumbai with a third option ready. The impact of this shift is being felt across multiple countries simultaneously. For American consumers, the most immediate effect is at the gas station. Midwest refineries that process Canadian crude are now facing a straightforward choice: pay global market rates or lose access to supply. That cost will move through the supply chain and land on the price boards at every gas station. For Canada, the economic impact is substantial. The Trans Mountain expansion alone returned $1.7 billion to the Canadian government last year. At $100 per barrel, that figure multiplies. Alberta's oil sands directly employ over 150,000 workers. Every additional dollar per barrel flows through Fort McMurray, through Kitimat, through Prince Rupert, into wages, into local businesses, into provincial tax revenue. For India, the pressure is acute. The country imports 90% of its energy. Half of that supply was moving through the corridor that just closed. India currently holds less than 10 days of emergency reserves. The urgency behind those 7 words, whatever Canada is offering, reflects a nation in a genuine energy emergency. For Japan and South Korea, the situation is similarly exposed. Both countries import nearly all of their energy. Both were heavily dependent on Middle Eastern supply routes. But here is something important to understand. Canada's advantage is not just price, it is geography. A Canadian tanker sailing from the Pacific coast reaches Asia in 10 days. The Middle East route, when it was open, took 20. Canada is not just cheaper right now. Canada is faster, safer, and politically stable. But here is where the story takes a turn that very few analysts predicted. The country that created this opportunity for Canada was not China. It was not India. It was not any of Canada's new buyers. It was the United States. Washington imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian energy. Washington called Canada the 51st state. Washington told the world it did not need its northern neighbor. And then Washington created the exact crisis that made Canadian oil indispensable to the world. The deeper consequences of this moment extend well beyond today's gas prices. What is happening right now is a structural realignment of Canada's position in global energy markets, and structural realignments do not reverse when the immediate crisis ends. Consider the contracts being signed this week. South Korea's Leng Agreement is a long-term deal. India's uranium contract covers 10 years. Pipeline infrastructure operates for decades. When a country builds its energy import strategy around a specific supplier and a specific route, it does not rebuild that strategy every few months. The customers Canada is gaining right now, Canada keeps. This has a direct implication for the United States. For decades, American refineries operated with the quiet confidence that Canadian oil would always be available at a discount because Canada had no alternative buyer. That assumption is no longer valid. Canada now has buyers in Asia paying global market rates. Every barrel sold to India or Japan at $100 is a barrel that is not available to American refineries at $70. The leverage has shifted, and it has shifted permanently. There is also a broader geopolitical signal being sent. Canada, a country that Washington publicly dismissed and economically pressured, has responded not with political confrontation, but with economic diversification. It built pipelines. It signed contracts. It sent its prime minister to Mumbai. It let the market make the argument. That is a sophisticated form of national strategy. And it worked. The question now facing Washington is uncomfortable but unavoidable. The tariffs on Canadian energy were designed to demonstrate American leverage. Instead, they accelerated Canadian diversification. They pushed Canada toward exactly the global buyers who now need it most. 18 months ago, Canada was called the 51st state. Its oil was discounted, its leverage was minimal, its options were limited. Today, Canada's Prime Minister was in Mumbai signing energy deals while the world's primary oil corridor was shutting down behind him. Today, India is asking for whatever Canada can offer. Today, South Korea, Japan, and Europe are looking at a map and realizing that Canada has the only reliable route that avoids every choke point on Earth. The tariffs that were meant to weaken Canada built Canada's customer base instead. The pricing discount that American buyers depended on is gone, not because Canada made a political decision, but because the market made it for them. What happens to those tariffs now? What happens to the pricing agreements that assumed Canada had nowhere else to go? Canada found somewhere else to go. And the world is paying attention. Paying attention. Paying attention.